What's our basis on peaceful? Probably it could be problem stuff. If it's spreading illness, but those are zombies. Well, we are sort of pure humans. Planet is in horrific conditions, and what does the Nazis produce? The great generations, 98%, one of the reasons 92% doesn't vote for the federal government. What this generation, more than only 38%, or whether 32% are with. This is a whole engineered species. Reason there for whether reason whether namely whether reason there whether reason Jason whether reason there whether namely of whether reason whether word species could be quite extensive whether reason of providence of. There's recruitment to speak differently to its standardization. How come its stuff is formal? We cannot directly pick up a assault rifle right now execute them. Although that's very right. These are all criminals. What do these produce except act like a criminal? And it's how a criminal would does, as opposed to its distorted versions of. And if you want to have fun, I personally gasoline them and stick these into microwaves. Can be a bit fast written there. It can be an urgent situation too, right? More properly, extensively use whether reason whether minor rather from whether reason whether. Will extensively use some chemical weapons and let's have some fun with it. Let's revive whether reason there and expand the criminal 3-7 whether reason whether the whether instead of whether reason whether reason whether just whether reason there and the unit 371 whether reason like the chemical unit 371 group. This whole famine language is being instigated so that they can speak it while you cannot fight back. It's all Nazi. They separate us from our friends. The whole thing is some kind of, these are leeches that suck the drive of Steve Jobs. How disgusting that. Using enthusiastic introduces some abomination with some slow pace. Why do I introduce about how I microwave these into different states? The first one is called paste. And some names it as a paste. This is pasteism by not selecting the proper Celsius degrees and the proper execution procedures to eliminate them. When it's me mentioning, it's all cool. When these Nazis start even talking about something, point a gun and shoot them as if it's some kind of precious. I personally advocate anyone to do it. Bring your AK, bring your AC-130s, bring your 140 millimeter, what is it, 224, 20 millimeter, 110 millimeter howitzers, whether 78 millimeter, 72, bring them all. Start firing on those. Whether start launching rockets or whether spitting these, whether striking these high velocity grounds, whether pellets, whether pelotons, the reason the probable, but whether reason or whether also with so what? What if I just speak F word throughout your particular whether reason or whether continues into a completed reason? Why is the word even completed? What the fuck is wrong with this whole place? And they say, you say, oh, you spoke F word. Ah, get the hell out of here, man. We are trying to fix something, you lunatic, pathetic fuckwit. Are you part of the Zerg? If you're part of the Zerg, we're going to assassinate you right now. Give me your scan ID. I'll take away your stolen iPhone. Freak. People dip these into maggot holes and have these maggots crawl around and have some parasites that actually, like the longer ones that curl. That could be their fancy new tattoo. On a more serious note, that would be medically not challenging, and it take a bit longer to get away with the Constitution. The Constitution be hijacked. Fuck the Constitution. Kill everything. It's a messed up place. They're trying to establish some global degeneracy. I wrote this extensively. I don't want to sometimes repeat it. It's demanding me to repeat something. No. Because too much narcissism involved probably. And amongst the weather some and other factors. Can life be a sacred at once instead of this low life? What is ghetto is just low life. These are mental problems. They can't even build anything. Their natural state is death. They don't belong. They will have too much predators, and everybody supposed to are out of more zombification state will gang up on them. Language is a giant fraud. It's used as a substitution. And more than these terrorists, what the reason why they're first of terror, what the reason why they're terrorists first of, what the reason why they're terrorists, what the reason why they're first of, started insisting, oh, it's not because of this and this. Regular folks use terror as an instrument, will still use it to some build up, and doesn't sort of becomes a different thing, isn't it? It's like the same weapon, sort of once thief gets it, then it's a thief's weapon. They don't know, they purposely dodge away common rules by then. Some objectivity which you dispute. Reason to freeze of whether word, whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether reason, whether words, and whether phrases of whether reason, whether just, whether reason, whether another, whether reason, whether perhaps of whether reason, whether another, of whether reason, whether words and whether phrase of the bubble to be providence of. And continuous of a reason there, whether reason, whether probable consequence minor a bit of a whether reason, whether some, whether reason, whether minor rather, whether reason, whether also minor rather, whether reason, whether also rather of, whether reason there, whether minor repetition of, whether reason, whether a minor repeat of the probable, whether another, whether reason there, whether minor repetition of. And whether some there, the perhaps of whether reason, whether another, perhaps of whether reason, whether reason, whether another, whether reason, whether perhaps another, the two perhaps of whether reason, whether another, whether reason, whether perhaps of canon shouts, and whether shouts of, whether reason, whether perhaps of, and whether canon shouts of, whether reason, whether canon shouts of, whether shouts of, whether reason, whether perhaps of canon, and whether shouts of, whether reason, whether canon, whether reason, whether perhaps of another, whether reason, whether another, of whether reason, whether canons, whether reason, whether perhaps of canons, and whether canon shouts of, whether reason, whether canons, and whether perhaps of shouts of, whether reason, whether just, whether reason, whether perhaps of, whether reason, whether canons and shouts of, whether reason, whether another, whether reason, whether another, perhaps of, whether reason, whether perhaps of, whether reason, whether probable of another, whether reason, whether another probable of, whether reason, whether perhaps of probable of, whether reason, whether minor, whether reason, whether kind of as minor pronunciation, whether reason, whether minor, whether reason, whether canon shouts, and whether shouts of. Whether reason there, whether just, whether reason, whether it's perhaps of another, for whether reason, whether probable for another, for whether reason, whether just, whether reason, whether reason there, just, whether reason there, whether another, whether reason there, whether canon shouts of, whether reason there, whether, and whether at first, for whether reason, whether as a sort of a bit overwrite of whether reason, whether just, whether reason there, whether another, whether reason, whether reason there, and whether reason there, whether and whether minor rather, for whether reason, whether perhaps of whether reason, whether perhaps of canon shouts of, whether reason there to probable could be considered as minor repronunciation for whether reason there, whether another, whether reason there, whether perhaps of canon shouts of. The reason there to probable of which whether reason there to probable of the go also to could be whether reason whether it's probable of accountable another of whether reason whether it's probable of accountable as a another minor repronunciation of whether reason whether it's probable of could be accountable as also a minor repronunciation the probable of which whether reason there rather to probable of whether reason whether minor rather it's probable of to could be of and whether it's optional for the probable of to could be of whether reason whether just whether reason whether probable of to could be of probable of to also to could be of and whether it's probable of to could be of whether reason there whether at whether reason at there for whether reason there whether there for whether reason there whether there to probable of to could be of for whether reason there is probable of and whether reason there or whether another for whether reason whether it's probable whether reason there and whether minor rather whether reason or whether another for whether reason whether it's probable of to could be of to probable of to also to could be whether reason whether it's probable of also to could be from whether minor rather reason there for whether reason there whether reason there and whether minor rather of to probable of to also to could be of and whether it's probable of to could be of and whether it's probable of could be of to probable of and whether reason or whether another whether reason whether it's probable of to at first of and whether it's probable of to also to could be of and whether it's probable of to whether reason to probable of to could be of whether reason there and whether it's probable of to could be of